Kicked out as a teen, now my parents want my money after abandoning me. I'm a 28-year-old woman with a twin brother, and this is the story of how our lives diverged dramatically, leading me from a painful past to a fulfilling present. It's a journey of betrayal, resilience, and ultimately self-discovery. My brother and I might have been born together, but our upbringing and the paths we chose were worlds apart from the very beginning. My brother and I were treated differently by our parents growing up. I noticed the subtle yet unmistakable signs of favoritism. My brother, let us call him Josh, was always the golden child in my parents' eyes. They genuinely believed that Josh was destined for greatness. It wasn't he, just that they had higher expectations for him. They acted as if he was their one true hope, while I was nothing but an afterthought. The difference in treatment was glaring, especially on our birthdays. Every year Josh would have a grand party complete with expensive gifts, elaborate decorations, and all his friends from school. Meanwhile, I was lucky if I got a small cake and a quiet dinner with just the immediate family. It wasn't that I didn't have friends or didn't want a party. It was that my parents never bothered to make the effort for me. They never asked what I wanted or how I felt. Josh's friends would often stay over for sleepovers, filling our home with laughter and noise, while I wasn't even allowed to invite a single friend to spend the night. My parents said it was because they didn't want the house to be too noisy or messy, but it was clear that this rule only applied to me. Looking back, I realize now that the pain I felt wasn't just from being left out, it was from being invisible. I was the black sheep, not because I was a troublemaker, but because I wasn't who they wanted me to be. I was more interested in sports, making friends, and being active. My grades weren't as perfect as Josh's, but I tried my best, yet no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough for my parents. The only person in my family who seemed to care about me was my grandmother. She was my refuge, my safe haven in a world where I often felt unloved. Whenever she visited, she would bring me my favorite chocolates and slip a few dollars into my hand, telling me to buy something nice for myself. She was the only one who made me feel like I mattered. As the years went by, the favoritism became more pronounced and evolved into something darker, emotional abuse. My parents would openly mock my grades. Even when I did well, if I brought home a B on a test, they would ask why it wasn't an A like Josh's. If I expressed interest in a hobby that wasn't academic, they would belittle it, telling me it was a waste of time. One time I asked if I could join the school's soccer team. I loved playing soccer. It was the one thing that made me feel alive, where I could forget about the troubles at home. But my parents refused. They said I needed to focus on my studies. Just like Josh, they didn't care that sports were my passion, my escape. All they cared about was that I wasn't as academically inclined as Josh, and they were determined to force me into the mold they had created for him. It was frustrating, heartbreaking, and above all, lonely. I felt trapped in a life that wasn't mine, trying to live up to expectations that were never meant for me. My self-esteem plummeted, and I started to believe that maybe I really was the failure they saw in me. The breaking point came during my sophomore year of high school. By this time, my relationship with my parents had deteriorated even further. Every interaction with them felt like walking on eggshells, waiting for the next criticism or insult. One day, I downloaded Snapchat on my phone. It was the latest trend, and all my friends were using it to stay connected. I didn't see any harm in it. After all, it was just an app. But when my parents found out, they went ballistic. They accused me of betraying their trust, of sneaking around behind their backs. They stormed into my room, yelling and throwing things around. My mom was screaming about how I was ruining my life, how I was wasting my potential by focusing on trivial things like social media. My dad, in a fit of rage, took the door off its hinges, declaring that I no longer deserved any privacy in their house. I stood there stunned as they ranted and raved I had done nothing wrong, yet they treated me like a criminal. It wasn't just the punishment that hurt, it was the sheer injustice of it all. I felt like I was being punished not for what I had done, but for who I was. And then there was Josh. Instead of standing up for me, instead of telling our parents that they were overreacting, he made things worse. He started spreading lies about me, telling our parents that I was sneaking out at night, that I was hanging out with the wrong crowd. None of it was true, but my parents believed him. Without question, Josh had always been manipulative, using his status as the favored child to get away with anything. But this time, he took it to a whole new level. He started framing me for things I didn't do, knowing that our parents would take his side no matter what. One night, I overheard him talking to his friends on the phone, bragging about how he had convinced our parents that I was a troublemaker. He laughed about how easy it was to manipulate them, how he could get away with anything as long as he played the victim. It was then that I realized just how deep his jealousy ran. Josh was introverted, awkward in social situations, and struggled to make friends. I, on the other hand, was outgoing and had a wide circle of friends he hated that about me hated that I could do. Something he couldn't, and so he decided to destroy what he couldn't of. Josh's jealousy reached its peak on our 14th birthday. For some reason, none of his friends showed up to his party that year. I don't know if they were busy or if there was something else going on, but Josh took it personally. Meanwhile, my friends took me out for ice cream, and we had a great time. When I got home, I could see the anger in Josh's eyes. He didn't say anything, but I knew he was furious. And then the next day at school, the rumors started. Josh began telling everyone that I was physically abusing him at home, that I was jealous of the attention he got from our parents and was taking it out on him. He would show up at school with bruises, claiming that I had punched him or shoved him down the stairs. But the truth was he was doing it to himself. I had no idea what was happening at first. I noticed that my friends were acting strangely distant and cold. They stopped inviting me to hang out, stopped talking to me between classes. It was as if I had become a pariah overnight. I couldn't understand why everyone was suddenly avoiding me. I tried to talk to my best friend, but she brushed me off, saying she didn't want to be involved in any drama. I felt like I was living in a nightmare with no idea how to wake up. Finally, one day, I confronted one of my friends, asking her what was going on. She hesitated at first, but then she told me the truth. She said that Josh had been spreading rumors about me, telling everyone that I was abusing him at home. She told me about the bruises he had shown them, the stories he had told about how I was jealous of him. I was stunned. I couldn't believe that my own brother, someone I had grown up with, could do something so evil. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and sadness. How could he do this to me? What had I ever done to deserve this? That night, I confronted Josh about the rumors. I asked him why he was lying about me, why he was trying to ruin my life. He just smirked at me and said, "Because you deserve it." Those words cut me to the core. I realized then that Josh wasn't just jealous or angry. He genuinely hated me. I wanted to tell my parents to make them see what was really going on, but I was too scared. I knew they would believe Josh over me. They always had. And so I kept quiet, hoping that somehow the truth would come out on its own. But things only got worse. The rumors continued to spread, and soon even the teachers were looking at me differently. I could see the suspicion in their eyes, the way they watched me during class, as if I was a ticking time bomb. It was humiliating. Then the worst happened. The principal called me, Josh, and our parents into his office. He said there had been serious allegations of bullying and violence, and he needed to get to the bottom of it. My heart was pounding as I sat there praying that Josh would finally tell the truth. But he didn't. Instead, he doubled down on his lies, telling the principal how I had been tormenting him for years, how I was jealous of him, and took it out on him physically. He even started crying, playing the victim so convincingly that I almost believed him myself. My parents sat there nodding along with everything Josh said. They looked at me with such disappointment, such disgust, that it made me feel sick. I tried to defend myself, tried to tell them that Josh was lying, but my words fell on deaf ears. In the end, the principal sided with Josh. He said that because of the severity of the allegations, I would be suspended for 10 days while they conducted a full investigation. I couldn't believe it. I had done nothing wrong, yet I was being punished for something I didn't do. When we got home, my dad didn't say a word to me. He just walked into my room, grabbed a suitcase, and started packing my things. I stood there frozen as he threw my clothes into the suitcase, his face a mask of anger and disgust. When he was done, he handed me the suitcase and said, "You don't deserve to live here anymore. Get out." My mom just stood there silent, her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't say anything. She didn't defend me. Josh was there too, standing in the doorway with a smug look on his face. I wanted to scream at him to tell him how much I hated him, but the words wouldn't come out. I was too shocked, too hurt. And so I left. I walked out of the house that had been my home for 14 years with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. I had no idea where I was going or what I was going to do. All I knew was that I was alone. Thankfully, my grandmother came to my rescue when I called her, sobbing, and told her what had happened. She was furious. She drove to my parents' house, picked me up, and took me to her home. She was the only person who believed me, the only one who cared. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. My grandmother didn't judge me or criticize me. She didn't try to change me or force me to be someone I wasn't. She accepted me for who I was, and that was exactly what I needed. I spent the next few years living with my grandmother, trying to heal from the trauma of my childhood. It wasn't easy. The pain of my parents' betrayal and Josh's lies haunted me every day, but slowly, with my grandmother's support, I began to rebuild my life. I threw myself into my studies, determined to prove to myself that I was more than what my parents had made me out to be. I graduated high school with good grades and was accepted into a good college. It was a fresh start, a chance to leave the past behind and create a new future for myself. In college, I discovered a passion for writing. I had always enjoyed writing in school, but it wasn't until I started taking creative writing classes that I realized just how much I loved it. Writing became my outlet, my way of expressing all the emotions I had bottled up inside for so long. I started freelancing as a content writer to make some extra money. At first, it was just a side gig, something to help pay for books and groceries. But over time, it became more than that. I started getting bigger clients, working on more challenging projects. Eventually, I realized that I could turn my passion into a full-time career. After graduation, I took the leap and started my own content writing business. It was terrifying at first, but also exhilarating. I loved the freedom. It gave me the ability to work on projects I was passionate about. And the best part was I could do it from anywhere. I became a digital nomad, traveling the world while working remotely. It was a dream come true. I visited places I had only ever seen in pictures, met incredible people, and experienced different cultures. It was the life I had always wanted, a life that was entirely my own. My grandmother was my biggest supporter. Throughout it all, she was so proud of everything I had accomplished, and I made sure to visit her often, no matter where I was in the world. She was the only family I had left, and I was determined to take care of her the way she had taken care of me. Recently, after completing a major project for a high-profile client, I posted about it on Instagram. I was excited to share my success with my followers, and the post got a lot of attention. It felt good to finally be recognized for my hard work, to have something to show for all the years of struggle and perseverance. Not long after, I was invited to speak in my alma mater about my career journey. It was an incredible honor, and it felt like I had come full circle. Standing in front of those students, sharing my story, I realized just how far I had come. But then out of the blue, my past came back to haunt me. One day, I received a call from my mom. It was the first time I had heard her voice in years. At first, I didn't know what to say. I was still angry, still hurt by everything that had happened, but I couldn't just hang up on her. She started by congratulating me on my success, saying how proud she was of me. But then she quickly changed the subject, asking how much money I was making. She said that she and my dad were struggling financially and that they needed help renovating their house. I was stunned. After everything they had done, after abandoning me when I needed them most, they had the audacity to ask me for money. I couldn't believe it. I told my mom that I would only help them if they publicly admitted that Josh had lied about me all those years ago. I wanted them to tell our family and friends the truth, to clear my name. It was the least they could do after all the pain they had caused me. But my mom refused. She said it wasn't necessary, that it was all in the past, and that I should move on. I was furious. How dare they ask for my help without even acknowledging the damage they had done? Since then, my parents have been calling me nonstop, leaving voicemails and sending texts begging me to reconsider, but I've been ignoring them. I'm not the same person I was back then, and I refuse to let them manipulate me anymore. A few days ago, I received a text from Josh. He had heard about the situation and decided to chime in. His message was filled with condescension and entitlement. He told me that I needed to move on, that it was time to let go of the past and help our parents. He even admitted to lying about me all those years ago, but showed no remorse. He brushed it off as if it was just a childish mistake, something that didn't matter anymore. And then he had the nerve to try and guilt trip me, saying that I was still unmarried and childless, as if that somehow made me less of a person. His words stung, but they also made me realize something important. Josh hadn't changed. He was still the same manipulative, selfish person he had always been, and my parents were still enabling him, just as they had when we were kids. I've spent the last few days reflecting on everything that happened, the pain, the betrayal, the anger. It's all still there, but it no longer defines me. I've come too far, worked too hard to let them drag me back into that toxic cycle. I'm torn between feeling guilty for not helping my parents and wanting to stand my ground, but deep down I know that I'm doing the right thing. They need to understand that actions have consequences, and they can't just waltz back into my life whenever it's convenient for them. I've built a life that I'm proud of, a life that I created on my own terms, and I'm not going to let anyone take that away from me. Not my parents, not Josh, not anyone. In the end, I've realized that the most important thing is to stay true to myself. I've learned to trust my instincts, to stand up for what I believe in, and to never let anyone make me feel like I'm not enough. My journey hasn't been easy, but it's made me who I am today, and for that I'm grateful. I'm stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before, and I know that no matter what happens, I'll be okay.